Hi, this is Amy
and Melissa. We are a couple of retired Texas teachers who are CALTs, Certified Academic Language Therapists. We started our own businesses, and now we have a podcast called The Dyslexia Duo.
So join us for our informative podcast, where we'll delve into dyslexia, covering the topics that affect parents, therapists, teachers, practitioners, and anyone who wants to learn more. We'll guide you through everything you need to know, from the first signs to the intricacies of dyslexia curriculum placement and beyond.
This season, we will cover the referral process, what to expect when your child or student is dyslexic, the generational impacts of dyslexia, and how to support those affected.
Come join us! Let's resume our conversation with the insights of Missy Purcell and Mallary Lattanze.
You know, I was thinking about, you both are talking as educators. There are people out there who aren't educators. Mallory, you two are an educator, as am I. But I think about our conversation that we had with Kareem Weaver, and he talked about how that parents really need to invest in their child financially, even if it's necessary, to get them everything that they need. And I think about how you are an advocate, you're a mama bear, and that's a wonderful thing, because you know all of the things you know exactly what to do. Not everybody knows that. Right. So I think about his conversation. I think, gosh, that would be awesome if people could rally around and raise money to hire an advocate if they need to have somebody support them in these meetings and be there for their child in that way, because the school does try, not every school, some schools do try to pull the wool over somebody's eyes, like Amy's talking about, or not fulfill their ends of the bargains, like Mallory's experience has led her mom to find out.
There are families that can't. Like, I mean, the tutor that I had wasn't like the experienced dyslexia tutor, but she was enough for me at the time, because my parents couldn't afford private school. So when my parents were like, okay, we can afford private school, I was in high school, and there was a very prestigious like Catholic school that a lot of our mutual friends went to, or my peers went to, and my parents were like, do you want to go here? And I was like, no, I will not get in. These kids are smarter than me. And at that point, you know, they were, again, trusting the school. It's like, well, maybe they just can't help her. Like, there weren't a lot of like high school dyslexic private schools. But yes, but there are families that just can't afford advocacy, which is why I don't charge anyone. Like, I'm not.
That's great.
Oh, you're going to get 5,000 emails now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell people that I just want to be a neighbor to neighbor. So I am very upfront. It's like, I have a full-time job. I won't be able to go to the meetings with you, but I'll tell you, you know, I'll provide you with the information. I will make sense of your child's evaluation. I will tell you how the legal process works, so that you don't have something, you know, pulled over you, or the rug pulled out under you, but I will help as much as I can. And so recently, like, I posted on social media, there was a parent who is a foster mom. And I was like, I will not charge you. I can have as many phone call conversations as you want. Happy to tell you my expertise and how I've helped other families in the neighborhood. But, you know, if you do need someone who can do more than I can recommend those people. So I'm very upfront with what I can and cannot provide. But I also think of my own family, like how I grew up. And I was like, you know, we can't, because advocates nowadays are like lawyers. Like, they're getting like lawyers. And sometimes that is needed, like Missy's story. Like, sometimes that is needed. But there was something that you said. Oh, I wanted to say this. So we talked a lot about like the system, and like how they're not saying and doing a lot. And like, Amy, I had a similar experience of when people would find out, like my employers would find out that I'm dyslexic. I actually got a lot of positive, but there was one where it was like my principal's boss, or my principal's boss's boss. We were in this big meeting, and I'm the dyslexia interventionist, and they were like, oh, you're only saying this because you're taking it too personal. It's because you're dyslexic. And they would
Wow.
blame it on me being dyslexic, that I was basically overly advocating, that I was asking for too much. And I was just like, now you're using my disability like against me, like against all these other kids. Like I thought that would make me a better dyslexia interventionist because I
That
have
makes me so mad.
yeah. So, but there are parents that I've talked to, like for like 2 years ago, I was helping a mom who got connected with me, who the school was saying your child needs to be retained at like second or third grade. I can't remember right now. And she was like, I signed the paper, I have to do it. And I was like, no, you can't. You don't have to. Like, do you want to? And again, it just it boggled my mind. It's like you didn't like Google, like, do I have like, what are the
Mhm.
laws? Did you go and ask someone? She just was following what they were saying. And I was like, do you suspect dyslexia? She's like, I don't really know what that means. Okay, I understand. Let's start from the beginning. Asked her a bunch of questions. She's like, yeah, that sounds like my child. And so it frustrated me. I was so glad I could help this mom because at the end of the day, the child was not retained and we got the kid tested within like 4 months and the child ended up being dyslexic. Now the kid's getting services.
Yay.
Big win. But I wanted to use her example as parents. Like, again, you've still got to do your part. Like, don't go in thinking that you can trust everyone. You got to do your part because otherwise, like, it's just going to get worse, right? The child could have been retained, could have never been diagnosed. Years would have gone by and the child could have gotten a lot worse. And so I just tell parents, like, you do have a responsibility too. The schools, absolutely, they should be the ones educating and empowering you and giving you the resources, but that's not the reality. There are some teachers and schools that are doing a great job, and I commend them, and they're the example. But you also, as a parent, you got to do your job too.
Yeah, and exactly what you said, you've got to do the research behind and make sure, and there are a lot of districts doing the right thing, doing the thing that's best for the student. And then there's some places, not just districts, maybe it's just like little campuses.
Yes.
They're kind of doing, well, this has worked in the past, so we're just going to keep doing this. I can remember being at a district one time, moving into a position as a dyslexia therapist, and I'm looking at the kids on my roster, and I'm looking at their ages, and I'm like, gosh, this one's old for this grade level. Gosh, this one's really old for this grade level. Gosh, and I'm looking, and they were all retained at some point, and they were using retention as
As
like
the
an RTI thing.
is a problem solver. And I always say, if it didn't work the first time, why do you think it's going to work
I
again?
mean, it's slower, louder. That doesn't
More
necessarily
practice, right?
right.
Yeah, more practice. Or there was a kid that I helped one time that was going to be retained and have the same teacher. And I was like,
Oh, wow. Wow.
Sometimes get better. I've had that happen before too, where they go, we're going to give him the same teacher he had last year because he's got a comfort level with her.
Comfort. Oh.
So when your eye starts twitching and you're going, what?
and there's no
When the summer
evaluation that's been
birthday-
done, and there's no evaluation. Like,
Yeah, but they'll use the summer birthdays is a big one. And look, we could talk about retention. I feel like a whole nother podcast. But when it comes to someone who genuinely has a learning difference, I have heard more stories how that has been a detriment than anything. They use, oh, well, it's a summer birthday and they're a boy, so this will help them in sports later.
Mhm.
No. They give all the excuses. The mom wouldn't have reached out to me if her gut didn't say something. And again, I'm glad she
Right.
did. And that was her way of like, I'm trying to advocate for my kid.
Right.
But other parents and it was because someone was like, you need to call Mallory. Like, you need to call Mallory. I can't explain it, but she can. But parents need to be like, I don't think this is the right answer, but I don't know how or what. I need to find someone. Listen to that and run with it.
Right. And that's that gut. That's that gut thing you were talking about, knowing your gut.
I was just going to ask the next question because I really need to know, Missy, since you're in Georgia and I don't know much about what's going on there in Georgia. I would love to know what changes you feel like need to happen at the policy level to improve outcomes for the dyslexic students.
oh yeah. I mean, for me, goodness, where do I start? So like I mentioned earlier, we do have a lot of great laws on the books. So, but the problem is we're not seeing change happen at the pace that the law mandates.
Yeah.
And so that is really concerning because technically last year was when systems, according to the Early Literacy Act, should have, gotten a screener, a universal screener. This year was the dyslexia screener, and those are supposed to work together. We've had to do so much advocacy just to get something as basic as, were these screeners vetted properly, right? And then luckily we have a legislation that's working hard to hold our Department of Ed accountable, because our Department of Ed and our legislation are just not on the same page. And we got those vetted. So now we have a small list that have been vetted, and we'll see what that looks like. We also have a clause that those will be reevaluated every 3 years. So as things change and we need to make better changes for Georgia. But what do I think needs to change? I would like to see, because currently our list of screeners is 5. Why can't we just have one screener? This is ridiculous.
Right.
It's just one screener. This is not a benchmark assessment. I just need to know, I'm taking the temperature of this kid, right? And I need to see where the red flags are. And I need to have some good data from this screener to know what to do next. So we have a problem between knowing what to do with the screener. So we need some better, I would say, really, we need better guidance from our Department of Ed to all of our districts that want to have local control. Good for you. But let's also just talk about what's best practice. Best practice says, I just screened a kid. There's some red flags. I'm going to pull that kid, and we're going to have a meeting about those red flags. And we're going to get a plan in place using some evidence-based instruction, maybe in a tier 2 setting or higher if needed. And then if the child is severe enough and the parents or someone else, actually asks for evaluations, we go ahead and move toward evaluations while we're collecting data from this intervention. We can do those things side by side. We have a bad habit of waiting 12 weeks to
fail.
doing testing. So this just drags out the process. So, just I think for us, it's more about, let's get some better guidance within our laws are good. Let's get some better guidance on what this looks like, best practice. Also, let's do a better job about communicating with parents. I'm pushing very hard for a communication plan that really gets a parent knowledge of where their child's weaknesses are. I think a parent deserves to know that your child has not mastered, they don't know 50% of their phonics, or
Right.
their ability to match letters or sounds to letters is at 44%. And really what that means, like, they haven't mastered any vowel teams. They haven't mastered any, 4 of the syllable types. Like, this is where they are. And then this is the plan. This is the intervention we have. And this is the plan. And this is when we're going to communicate with you data from that plan every, week or every 2 weeks. And this is when we're going to meet again. And if we don't see this by this point, this is the plan. I wish that we had a really good decision tree like that was created by our DOE as best practice. This is like, if you want to be a gold star district, you're going to do these things. This is how you're going to communicate. We do have a phenomenal district here in Georgia that I scream about all the time. It's Marietta City Schools. They do a phenomenal job at this. They test all their kids in the first 2 weeks of school. Those kids are already in groups of 10 by the second week of school for 90 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And your most severe children that need those intense interventions, everyone in the building's teaching reading. So everyone is trained to teach reading. So where your high flyers might get, a great teacher, but your struggling kids are going to get those most highly qualified instructors at more intense intervention. Everybody in this district cares about literacy. The bus drivers are driving down the road practicing phonological their sounds, they're and the lunch ladies, and it is the mandate of the whole district that literacy and safety are the two number one. So if we could get the guidance to create that for every district in our state, and then get coaches. We did get funding this year to get literacy coaches in the classrooms. I don't think it's enough funding. I think we need more, but we have this bad problem of training with no practicum and no classroom support. So if you're going to be an interventionist, you need to have training and you need a practicum. You need some level of someone saw you do this and they told you did it wrong and you got some course correction. And because we have a problem where kids are getting in intervention groups with poorly trained teachers and they're stuck forever in the same level because the teacher doesn't know how to pace them forward or remediate backward. And there's this constant, let's just stay here because you're stuck on one skill. So we're just going to camp out here forever on, soft G because you just can't seem to get it. Well, that's not really going to help the kid. They might be able to
Right.
master some future skills while you keep working on this persistent little problem. And so we just have, for us, I think it's more about long-term plan for better guidance and implementation and accountability. Mallory and I were talking about accountability earlier, just this ability to see, are the districts that we're funding actually doing the things they're supposed to be doing? And is it translating into proficient readers? And if it's not, there should be some plans to support that.
Do you guys have a dyslexia handbook there in Georgia?
We do, and it is modeled after the Texas handbook. It's
All
a
right.
phenomenal handbook. It is a great one. If you go in and type in Georgia Dyslexia Handbook, you'll see that it might feel very familiar. And this year, part of our legislation, HB 538, which was a combination bill to take our early literacy bill and our dyslexia bill and put it into one big bill to make it comprehensive, includes that bill will be distributed by the superintendent to every administrator and teacher in every district at the beginning of every school year. That was something I pushed hard for because I
Good.
have too many meetings where people don't even know we have a handbook. And then my understanding in Texas, the handbook is very well known and very popular, and people can quote it. We're not there yet. So I was channeling my inner Mallory, my Texas friends while I was in that meeting, and I was thinking, we got to get people to know this. And I was just in an IEP meeting a few days ago, and I maybe in my more mama bear mode said, did y'all know we have a handbook? And here's the link. And I think you guys all might want to read it before our next meeting. It has a great decision tree in it that could help us make better decisions for this child. Because I feel like right now we're using our opinions a lot and not what is mandated by the local. So yeah, we do. And it's great, but it's only as good as people who open it up and read it and use it. So yeah.
When I go to art, we call them ARDs here in Texas. When I go to ARDs, I tell principals, they know that there's a Texas Dyslexia handbook. I'm like, just download it and make it a little thumbnail folder on your desktop, your laptop, whatever you have, so that you can always access it. I mean, it's a free document. It's a free document. It's not going to cost you any money to download it. And listening to you speak, I was actually kind of taking a couple of notes because my brain went elsewhere, and I'm not going to biographize because I know everybody gets tired of that. But I'm thinking about parent education. What do we need to do to support our parents? We need to inform our parents of what their rights are as a parent and a child in public or charter. We need to inform our parents about the process outside of the ARD, right? What's going to happen and how to support the child, or what avenues you can use to support the child. I don't think our parents understand completely still what that can look like. And then I also don't know if parents, after like dyslexia intervention has been provided, what happens after a curriculum, and I think that's a big question mark in a lot of parents' heads afterwards.
Well, I will say that a lot of what you said, Missy and I have presented on and will be, like the one about supporting secondary students. That one I think is one of our favorites because we actually touched on, if they have finished an intervention program, what happens? We talk about appropriate accommodations and setting them up for post-secondary. And like I said, I strongly advocate now for that 504 transition. And like, what's the difference between, when they're in high school, 9th through 12th, and then if they want to go to college, what questions to ask? All those things, like you said, in the presentation we're giving at Learning Ally, is it next week?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Starting next week is about, I will say it's not really for the therapist, but it is for your gen ed teachers. There's a lot of teachers who are like, okay, I know something and I know I need more, but how can I empower my parents more? So we even talk about the stages of grief for a parent when they find out their child has a learning difference, because I was definitely the source of blame. So I don't really just go ahead and tell everyone I'm dyslexic. I feel like there's a time and place. I will say that I'm never shy to say it, but I don't like wear it as a badge, when I go around. Well, I was dyslexia interventionist a few years ago, and I was sending home mastery checks. It was like a benchmark, like mastery check at the beginning of the year. And I write my checks backwards. It has nothing to do with my dyslexia. I am not left-handed. It is something my mom said I started when I was a kid, and I just kept it. So it's just one of those things that I do. Well, the parent came back and said, I noticed that your check marks are backwards. I was like, yeah, it's just, something I do, And he's like, well, are you dyslexic? And I said, I am actually. The parent said that I was incompetent to teach his child because I was dyslexic, which, if you think about it, the child's dyslexic. So you're also saying that your child's incompetent. And I know that's not what he meant either way. And I had just learned from a different conference about the stages of grief for a parent. It was easier for me to not take it personally because I learned that. And I was like, wanted to say this out loud, but in my mind, I was like, oh, you're in the blame stage. Got it. Okay. Okay. But it gave me more empathy too, because I was like, okay, we're not attacking each other. We're not at war with each other. How can I work with you? And so after a few meetings, and even when I was asked to not attend, which, okay, the parent didn't want me to attend, I gave all the data. Some of it I put regular check marks. And the student actually advocated and said, Miss Lattanze is the only one trying to help me how to learn how to read. I want to stay in her class, because he was at the point he wanted to take him out of my class. So all to say is I totally agree, Amy. There was a lot of parent education, but I think it also starts with empowering your teachers on how to empower your parents, because they're the ones that are in front of those parents more than we are. We're kind of like that extra layer of like, okay, I can't help you, but go to Mallory or go to Missy. So we're hoping that the more, advocacy work we can do, it'll help.
I think advocacy has different tiers of support that can be offered to parents, to teachers, to admin, to just kind of inform their decision making. I'm looking at our questions, and we've answered a lot of these in some way, shape, or form, but there's one that is sticking out to me that I want to touch on. What do you say to schools that says we don't do labels?
Oh, can I go?
Yeah, let's hear it.
You go, and then I want to after.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Listen, I know this is a hot button topic. It just is in general. The whole conversation with special ed in general and labels is just such a hot button topic. But okay, a couple of things, because I was thinking of this one. The first one is a label is really just a book, a title of a book that you can open to help you know where you need to go. And we know that within labels, let's just start with dyslexia. Within dyslexia, it is a spectrum. Some kids are very dyslexic, we say, and some are mildly dyslexic. And so, but kids that are dyslexic too. Like there's a reason why there's a category, because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of similar profiles. Some are harder to remediate, or persistent patterns of weakness, but also patterns of strength. So we know. So for me, the label is, when a school says this, I'll say, well, how can you properly, first of all, identify this child? And then secondly, support this child. If we don't know what's going on, right? And we don't understand that within dyslexia, these characteristics, because they're in this label, need this type of intervention or this type of support. All children who have struggles might have similar or overlap of weaknesses and patterns of weaknesses, but there's something about knowing that it's stemming from dyslexia that's critical for you to know to support this kid. Secondly, we don't do labels. Well, I'm sorry, but IDA says you will. This is my favorite one. One of the first things I learned when I was advocating for my child is I would say dyslexia, and they would literally just ignore me or say specific learning disability and reading, and they didn't want to have that conversation. And well, there's a Dear Colleague letter that was written several years ago that actually tells schools not only can, but you should say dyslexia and dysgraphia and all the other titles that we need to say and labels we need to say, because it's a critical beginning point for this child to get the intervention they need. If I don't say dyslexia, then it kind of opens up my child to, well, I'm just going to let you read some more. I'm going to put you in a circle and we're going to do some round robin reading. We're going to do some fluency. We're going to ignore the foundational weaknesses that are stemming from maybe a phonological processing deficit or a morphological processing deficit, or sometimes for some kids, it's all the above, right? And so you're going to end up not properly supporting this child. So when we say we don't do labels, I'm sorry. No, we do labels. And it also helps us understand that children, I think the other part of this was about the kids just fine, or they're doing fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
Actually, Yeah, or they're, they'll catch up. We're just going to do a little more of this. It actually helps us peel that back and go, no, because they have dyslexia, they're not going to be doing fine if we don't intervene now, if we don't do something now, because we know that this is stemming from a processing deficit, a weakness in a particular foundational skill or skills, and it's going to need an intensive intervention from a highly trained professional to help them do better and help support them in the school. And if we don't do that, it is more likely that our children are what happened to my child? It's going to be, oh, let's try reading recovery. Oh, let's put you in a room. Oh, this teacher's going to use LLI now, just more balanced literacy, because all they could see was my child couldn't comprehend, and they were working on comprehension. And I was like, but you don't understand. He can't comprehend because he can't read fluently. You know why he can't read fluently? Because he can't decode. And so you've got to understand those things in order to better support them. And also one last thing, and then I'll be quiet and I'll let Mallory talk, but I think this is really important. We say labels because there is nothing wrong with being dyslexic. Now, dyslexia is hard. I mean, and it has been hard for our family, and it's been hard for my child. I wish that I could remove some of the obstacles he's been through. It's not fun to watch your child suffer. It's not fun to watch your child work so hard and then fail something the next day. It's just gut-wrenching sometimes. However, because we know it's dyslexia, I can remind him over and over, you have dyslexia. It's not an excuse. However, it's an explanation. It helps you know why you do this. And it helps us know the kinds of teachers we need for you. And it helps us know what to tell your teachers about you so they can support you. If I didn't know it was dyslexia and I can't say that, then it's like, well, have fun. He's got some things going on that we can't talk about. And also, we don't do this for any other category of special education. If you have autism, if you have a cognitive, a delay, maybe you have Down syndrome, maybe with some other, we say all those. Why in particular can we not say these learning disabilities? There's specific names. There's power in the name. There's help in the name. And there's so much understanding in the name. And there's advocacy and education in the name. It helps me tell others what you need to know to support my kids. So I'll get off my soapbox now. I feel like I just
I love that. And I
love it. Yeah.
that statement. We name everything else. Why don't we talk about dyslexia? Good point. Why? That's mind-boggling to me. Sorry, Mallory, I'm stepping on your time.
No, it's okay. No, it's all good. Okay. So I'll echo a little bit what Missy said, and then I have a part B, I guess you could say, to all this. So I shared my story. I was FLD reading. And so, yes, I have played the what if game in my life. What if they gave me the dyslexia label? Would I have gotten the actual support that I needed? I think with all the information I had, no, because Georgia wasn't there yet. But it did put this stigma in Georgia where it's like, we can't say dyslexia. So Missy mentioned that there was a bill that went into effect in 2019, but it was passed by the Senate, I believe, in 2018. My dad actually saw it in the news, and I was in Texas, saw it hit the news in Georgia, and text messaged me saying, I emailed every senator that voted yes and thanked them, said, it's too late for my daughter, but thank you for now saying dyslexia for every other child. Because my dad is dyslexic. He's undiagnosed, but trust me, he is. And that's where I get it from. And so I've had a lot of thought about the what if game and what if I really did get the label. I can't play the what if game right now, but I had my wonderings. But it's interesting. Yes, there are schools that don't. And, like I said, and I have that experience. But I have been a teacher in charter and private. I've been in, and what I've seen is, again, it goes back to parents. The parents have a really hard time with the labels. And I still encounter that. And those are the hardest to advocate for because they're not on board yet. And it's a delicate dance. And so they have so much fear of I don't want my kid labeled, because I've actually worked with kids. It's I don't want to be labeled as the SPED kid. I didn't either. Trust me. I was with kids that had lower cognitive profiles. I had to be pulled out of all my classes and get all these tutors. But I don't know, maybe it's because I had really supportive parents and they're like, this doesn't define you. And I used to say, well, you can label me as a brunette girl. That's a label. I'm a Hispanic girl. I'm a woman. I have all these labels that are about me, and dyslexia is just one of them, right? But I find the stigma with the labels is more in parents, unfortunately, than in schools. If it's schools, it's more policy. Like Georgia took a while to, I think the bill, Missy, correct me if I'm wrong, was say dyslexia bill.
It was, yeah.
And so they literally wouldn't say it. So I think it trickled down to the schools not saying it. But the parents, it's like here in Texas, we say it like it's more common. And now I'm just like, I feel like I'm beating my hands on the table talking with these parents. And I was like, I understand that you have hopes and dreams for your child, but we can get them there if we
Yes.
can get them the intervention. And just, they're just so wrapped around this label. And so they have to go to the prestigious private schools because that's how they're going to get into college. It's like, I didn't go to UGA, I went to Alabama, and I'm still a smart person. Okay. So have you ever heard of the Holland poem?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. So it's about Holland and it's a poem, but basically it's about taking a trip and you have all these expectations on what your trip's going to be. And it's the same journey as a parent. You have all these expectations that your child is going to be, and you have all these hopes and dreams. And then all of a sudden your trip takes a detour. So now your child, again, it's like a metaphor, your child has been diagnosed with dyslexia. So the trip is now different. The journey is different, but that doesn't take away the beauty and the adventure that you're going to have. And so I used to have it like posted, and coincidentally, one of my coworkers, we were talking about it, and we were talking about the Holland poem. And I was like, okay, so now that summer is here, I work 12 months. I work throughout the school year, and I'm like, I'm going to get it printed, and I want that in my school. And we don't really have that problem in my school with parents because they're coming to us. They're over the stigma. But it's a good reminder, and maybe they can share it with another family. But it's really beautiful because that's all it is. It's just a different journey. And it would be a boring world if we were all the same. And I do know that there are some people who think that dyslexia, it's like, if I had a wish, there wouldn't be dyslexia. I have a really hard time of saying that I wish I never had dyslexia because I really love the person that I am. Because if you knew me, what I didn't say in my story is I was a very anxious kid. I never went to slumber parties. I hated going on field trips. I had really, really bad anxiety. The performance anxiety went into social anxiety. And so no one thought I would go away for college. Everyone thought I'd be stuck at home for the rest of my life. And then I moved to New Zealand and I moved to all these different states. And they're like, who is this girl? And it's because of my journey through dyslexia. And so I feel like if I didn't have it, maybe I wouldn't have been an anxious person, but I don't know, maybe I would have had a more boring life. I'm very proud of it. I do think of it as my superpower. So yes, it caused a lot of pain. And Missy talked about it caused a lot of pain and it affects more than just a person, but the family dynamics. But there are a lot of other sufferings, and I rather have taken that journey than something else.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Hi, this is Melissa with Kids First Dyslexia Services. I am excited to share with you my private practice. Kids First Dyslexia Services is a private practice that specializes in dyslexia therapy. Each one-on-one session focuses on instruction specific to your child's needs in a nurturing environment that develops self-esteem, builds confidence, and fosters a sense of accomplishment, resulting in happier kids with higher levels of achievement. We provide a professional, personalized experience, always putting the child first. We value the relationships with both our students and parents because strengthening skills and overcoming hurdles to achieve desired goals and success is a team effort. For more information, please visit www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com. That is www.kidsfirstdyslexia.com.
Hi, this is Amy Rodenroth, and as part of the Dyslexia Duo podcast team and owner of Discovery Dyslexia Services, I want to talk to you about my business. Our COUT-trained team offers expert virtual or in-person therapy located in Prosper, Texas, using proven dyslexia curricula like Take Flight, Build, MTA, alphabetic phonics, and reading by design. We also provide crucial independent evaluations and advocacy services. Don't wait. Empower your child today. Visit www.discoveread.com to learn more. That again is www.discoveread.com. Discoveread, covering all your dyslexia needs. Let's return to the show.
I was just going to say too that there is a very important thing to recognize is when we don't give the child labels, they don't get that success. And I have students who got the label. They are National Honor Society students. They are graduates of college. They are people who got nominated for the Duke TIP program in 7th grade just based on their reading scores alone. There are people that have great success. And there are people that go through college and not National Honor Society students, but they still go to college and they still live successful lives and they're happy individuals. And if they didn't have that, you have to think about the pipeline to prison system that we have to have in the back of our minds if we don't provide the proper literacy interventions when they need to be provided. And that is what happens when we give children labels. And I think that's what a lot of schools don't remember, or a lot of parents don't think about. They don't think about that long term, and it's no fault of their own. They might just not see it through an educator's eyes.
Mhm.
And you talked about, because I hear about the dyslexia is my superpower thing, and just that automatic dyslexia label doesn't mean, you're Superman, you can do anything. You have to be trained. But I think the superpower that dyslexia truly gives you is that perseverance and
Yes.
thinking outside the box,
Oh,
because
yes.
you have to learn. I always say my dyslexic students are my hardest working students. Always. And I know that's only who I work with. But, when I was thinking about my own children growing up and how easily reading came to them, and I used to think, there's got to be a struggle somewhere, or if they're going to think everything's easy for the rest of their lives. And I had one that approached it that way too, So it made me think some of what Mallory was saying. I was writing it down. There's a documentary called The Big Picture, and it's like 12 years old, right? So, and it's about dyslexia. It's by Robert Redford's brother, I think. But his wife is in it. It's about his wife, who is a teacher, and his son, Dylan. That's it, because I remember he misspelled his name. Dylan. And then a bunch of other people it kind of highlighted. But the mom's named Carl Redford. And she was talking about when she found out, it was almost, she kind of described it a little bit like it was a death of her plans. She goes, we had big plans when he was born. I'm an educator. He's a smart kid. We were going to go out and conquer the world. Not that dyslexia killed that. He went on to college. He went on to a very prestigious college, but it just kind of took a different route for a while. So if anybody hasn't seen that, it's about 12 years old. You probably go on HBO or Cinemax or something and go watch that. I always try to make connections to what our speakers are saying, and Mallory made me think of that movie because that stood with me so much so that I can quote what the mom said. We were going to go out and conquer the world. And then this came along.
So I was just going to ask you too, what gives you hope right now for the fight for better identification for dyslexia and or interventions? So Mallory or Missy, whoever wants to start. But I would like to hear from both of you.
It's so funny because Mallory and I have been talking about hope, and it's popping up in one of our next presentations, and I'm always hopeful. I think this is actually what drives me, is this either innate or naive, I don't know what you want to call it, or this big desire for there to be hope that this will change, hope that one day every kid will get what my kid got through a fight, but without a fight. That's the hope. So where do I see glimmers of that? My favorite glimmer of hope is the teacher that I mentioned earlier that called me that one day to tell me that Matthew knew something that morning and didn't know it later and failed the encoding test. And she was crying. Y'all, she's gone on to get her dyslexia specialist.
Aww.
She is trained now in Orton Gillingham, and she's later in her career too. This is not like she's a starting off career. She's later. She's got probably retirement on the horizon, but she cares so much And even though she didn't have all the perfect skills that she needed to really help my kid, her desire to do the right thing, even when she didn't have the training, like during the pandemic, we were up one night texting each other, Googling free decodable books because our system had none. So I was trying to help her do her job better, and she was trying to help my child, and we were a team. So we both didn't know anything about what we were talking about at that moment in our lives, but we were learning and we were trying, and she's gone on to do that. So, and I keep meeting people like her, in the middle of some of the conversations, and I always try to be very careful here because I love teachers. And even though I fault a system, it doesn't mean I don't love teachers. And even though I bumped into some teachers that it's hard for me to talk about today. There's more like, and I'll just say her name because she won't care, Miss Hyatt. And Miss Hyatt gives me hope. And there's more people like Miss Hyatt. And I have hope in the people who are sitting in IEP meetings, who are staying curious versus locking down. And even if they don't feel like they can be comfortable in the meeting, they're sending someone my name and saying, you should chat with Missy, right? Like you should reach out to this person, this underground railroad of dyslexia, right? You should go find her because she can help you interpret some of these scores or fight for the right thing for your kid or, get your kid where they need to be. So I have hope that wherever a teacher is right now, that's willing to stay curious, that's willing in their own way to fight, even if the system is not set up for them to actually fight publicly. I have hope. And I have hope that for the first time ever, we are so lucky in Georgia to have legislators who are former educators, who are at the forefront of our bills, who are listening. I mean, we have this freshman senator this year in Georgia that carried our bill to ban reading recovery, but he worked with a legislator from last year that carried our other bill, and it was a bipartisan bill. In this world, there's none of that. So it's a bipartisan bill because they prioritize children learning to read. If you can't all lock hands around that, so I have hope that there's one issue in this whole world that we can lock hands on and we can agree on. We know that kids need to learn to read and we need to remove things. And to have the senator on the floor, he read a letter that I wrote for my child on the floor as a way to fight for this bill. And then even just recently when he reached out and congratulated my son for making honor roll, he didn't have to do that, but it's personal to him because he's a former educator. And what a great role model for so many of our educators in the trenches to have someone openly at this top level saying these things. Maybe they'll feel hopeful now moving forward and they'll step out of the dark shadows and start saying more and advocating more in the trenches. So I have more hope today than I did yesterday. And I can't help but think that that's the only thing we've got to hold on to keep us advocating. Without hope, advocating is really depressing because it's like a terrible roller coaster that never ends.
Yep.
And so that's my hope. Mallory, I'll toss it to you.
Yes, I definitely have hope. I mean, I don't think that we could be in this position if we didn't have hope. But I think, with Soul to Story podcast and just all these other podcasts, including your own, there's so many more accessible avenues for people. Like, I'm that weird person who does not listen to music in their car. I only listen to podcasts. And it's amazing to think that as busy moms that they can just, turn on the podcast while they're driving from like point A, point B, point C, all the way to Z in their busy lives, that they have more access, right? And all these other resources. But I know I joke around with like UJ and Alabama, but I am so proud of University of Alabama and how far they've come. I truly did cry when I found out that they are developing CALPS. And it just was like, wow, like for a school to be like, I don't know what to do with you. And I don't even remember who that person was. I don't remember what they look like. They were just doing their job, right? But that gives me hope. It's like, okay, and the things that Georgia has done, the Say Dyslexia bill, that brought tears to my parents' eyes. Yeah. And so we are making progress. And even Texas, could we do a lot more? Absolutely. I would not be advocating here in Texas if I thought everything was hunky-dory. Right. But I think that we have a lot of great listeners. just as equal as we have a lot of talkers and movers and shakers, because I think you definitely have to have a balance of both. I really do try to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. I'm very fortunate to have met Missy. I love surrounding myself where, I can learn more from someone else. I think that just because we have different lived experiences doesn't mean that you can't learn more. Missy and I were talking earlier, and I was like, I need to know more about this. I have a question about this. I need a specific example. And it's because I'm hungry for not only the perspective, but like what am I missing here so that I can learn more? And it's just amazing. So there is hope. There's a lot of people that I think parents and teachers, educators, admin can go to in an age where I grew up and my mom's like, where do I go? And had limited resources, knowing how much is out there now. And it's funny. So quick story. So I was talking with my mom about this kid, and they got newly diagnosed, and the parent is still grappling with this diagnosis and understanding it. And my mom somehow was like, you know what? I bet when the child is in third grade, they're gonna learn, because that's when it gets harder. I said, Mom, how do you know that? She goes, yo. And I go, but how did you know it's third grade? And she was basically saying that what we say, you're reading to learn now. And she didn't have those words, but the fact that she was like, third grade is a pivotal moment, I was just like, look at you, Mom, you're an advocate too. And so, the fact that she can have conversations with other parents too, with her experience and what I've shared with her is really powerful too. And I think it empowers her too, since she thought that she wasn't doing enough, but she really was.
That's
I
awesome.
love that we have these podcasts and all these avenues for learning, because we didn't have this when my son was younger, and I didn't know what I know now even. So I just feel like I'm grateful for the people that are coming up through the schools now to have that available to them. And I hope to just be another source that can give information, and I can learn from all of you guys that come on the podcast and share more information. So
Yes.
it's really cool.
Okay, so I'm going to ask another question. So say you get on the elevator and there's like maybe teachers that don't buy into what dyslexia is, or principals or admin or whoever. What is your elevator pitch? Your 30, gosh, what elevator is 30 seconds? I don't know. But say you're going from 0 to 60. I don't know. But say you have a 30-second elevator pitch. What would you say to them to kind of maybe help drive a change?
I'm going to say that I'm going to hit the emergency button. So just knowing that they're in there, they don't spark a question. You just know you're in an elevator with educators and admin.
That maybe don't really trust in what dyslexia is, or think it's just I've been told it's a fad before.
Okay. I would actually not use my personal story. And I would say, I was like, oh, I'm an educator, and I definitely have been around kids and other educators who thought that. And guess what? And I would share my experience as a teacher. Then I kind of segue into my personal story, because I do find that if you share your personal story first, they do all go straight to, oh, this is just personal. So I try not to go that route at first and come from an educator. So it's educator to educator. And so I feel like I'm on the spot, but that's the whole point, right? You're on the spot in an elevator. It would probably come out more natural in the elevator. And I might be, like I said, tempted to hit the emergency button to lock us in there. But I think just finding some common ground at first. And I do like to be thought provoking. So have you ever thought about this? Have you considered this? I think it comes across not so attacking that way. And then you just kind of see where it flows to. And then I would be that person that gets off on the same floor and keeps walking with them. I have tended to do that. I have been to conferences where I don't even go to my session, and I just keep following the person. And I'm like, yeah, I was supposed to go here the entire time. You're following me, not me following you. I guess that's
I love it. No, I think that's great. I know I kind of put you on the spot with that question. So, Missy, you've had like a couple of minutes to think. What you say?
Okay, I'm going to go. Well, first of all, I kind of did something like this before during the legislation season this year. I happened to catch someone's speech because he was enlarging on his phone how he was going to speak in favor of 3Qing. And so I changed my speech to make his speech not work, and it worked. Later, he tried to talk to me about 3Qing, and I would just said, I don't really have time for this today. Because you seem to have like zero knowledge of why it's not helpful, but I'd be happy to follow it with you. But if I was on this elevator, this is what I would do. Hey guys, I love data. So I would start with what's the percentage of kids in your district that are not proficient readers? And then I would probably let them know, well, I probably know why a certain percentage of those kids aren't reading. And I actually know if you did for this 1 in 5, for the rest of the kids that aren't proficient readers, even all the kids that actually might even already be proficient readers, you might actually see, I can probably almost guarantee based on what I've seen other districts do, at least 3 here in Georgia have done this, you might begin to see your percentages go up, because I know that district leaders love to brag about what they're doing, and that data talks, right? And it also would be a great way for us to not have to wrap up data in fancy little ways to try to make it look better than it is. You can just put it out there for what it is. So I would start with data. Your data says you've got too many kids that can't read, probably over 50% if you're like most counties here in Georgia. So I've got a solution for you. What I hit so hard, and we've done this a lot with Code Dyslexia, is that we are very locked in on dyslexia, but we know that what we do for dyslexics will work for every kid. And so that high percentages of students, based on Nancy Young's ladder of reading, need structured literacy. Only a very few small amount don't. So if we flip the switch here and we tailor the instruction to the masses, everyone benefits and no one's harmed. Right now, few people are benefiting and many are being harmed. So you can change that with this simple change. And then I might throw in, while you're getting your teachers trained, why don't you hop in those trainings too?
Yeah.
Because it'll be a lot easier for you to take them somewhere that you're also going with them, right? And when you go into their classrooms and you start to see what this looks like, you'll actually know if it's the right thing or the wrong thing. And maybe take a cue from Mallory. Get some people in there who've done this before, who are smarter than you, and get them to be part of your solution, and y'all learn together. So look at your data, change your instruction, get some training, and just keep it very like action item oriented. I've also learned that a lot of these people in the high places don't seem to have time sometimes to hear everything I want to say. So I really try to just hit those things. If I got more time, I would share my story too, though, because I have found that sharing my story has been very effective. And it's really hard to look at a parent of a child that you failed and say you're not going to change something. So we don't have to keep doing this. We can change this.
All right.
I like what Nancy said.
I'm the data queen, data or it didn't happen. So.
Well, like, I'm a very data-driven person. I was like, why didn't I think of that? I should let you go first.
Oh, no, I like both avenues, quite frankly. I think we should write up a handbook and put our 30-second elevator pitch in there with if they say this, there's your flow chart. If they say this, you say this. If they say this, you say that,
I love it. I love it. It's like a debate. I love that.
Dyslexia debate.
I love it. I love it. Brilliant.
So where can the listeners go to learn more about dyslexia from you guys? I mean, you guys are amazing. You have so much information and you're just a wealth of knowledge. So where do you recommend people go to learn more, connect, and support the work you're doing?
So I'm not as active on social media as Missy is, but I am on X. So it's at Big City Dyslexic, because I'm a dyslexic in a big city. So Big City Dyslexic. I do try to post. That's probably the one place I try to post the most. And then my LinkedIn page. But I will also say, since I'm president of HBIDA, we have started a blog. So as far as we're trying to connect more with our community. So the HoustonIDA.org. I did do a president's blog letter, I guess you could say, beginning of the year. And you can see all of our great work. we have what's called hire a speaker. So it's me and two others. And so there's others that are not listed on there. But if you are a public school, private school, charter school, even if you're just a small community of moms that are like, we want to get together at our church and learn more, the funds go directly to the Houston branch. So it's you hire us, but the funds do not go to us. It goes to Houston IDA. And so you can see a list of our topics. And so that has actually taken off. I'm really excited about it because we feel like we want to be the source of information and advocacy for you guys. And then, yeah, Missy can tell more about hers, but we do present a lot. So if you just follow either one of us, you can see when and where we present. We got 2 this summer. So next week, Learning Ally. So we'll presenting, and then we will be in Plano. So very close to the Dyslexia Duo at the Region 10 Summer Dyslexia Institute. So Missy and I will be reunited in person again, and it'll be our first like on stage in person that her and I do. We've done a lot of virtual, so we're really
You know what time y'all are presenting?
So we actually are presenting on day 1 and day 2. We broke up. So we are doing the supporting secondary students. And so we divided into instructional on day 1 and then advocacy on day 2.
Nice.
So we're talking throughout your podcast about like even kids that are done with intervention, what do you do? All that's going to be incorporated, very instructional, but also, there's a big advocacy piece for self-advocacy. So yes, so we'll be presenting twice.
For clarification for the listening audience, learningally.org, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's our annual Learning Ally Dyslexia Conference.
And this is the 10th anniversary. So this is a
Yes.
pretty big one. So we have some pretty cool keynotes coming this year. And it's always great. So much information.
Oh, yeah.
I love it because it's practical. You walk away with, you get the inspiration and then you get the practical, and a great little networking opportunity as well. Lots of fun. They have a fun virtual way to connect during the conference as well, which is really nice. You can follow me. I'm on Twitter too at Missy Purcell. I also have something I launched last year at Miss Purcell Advocates on Instagram, and then Miss Purcell on Facebook, and that's Miss MISS. And those are just places where I share nuggets of information regarding dyslexia or also your rights under IDA and special education. And this old dog can learn new tricks. I've learned how to make a reel or two, and I will tell you, they're literally my way of responding to what I literally experience inside of meetings on the ready. So it's all inspired by real life moments. So it's so if you're
Are
following,
you acting them out?
what?
Are you acting them out or?
No.
No,
just
they're like
the
memes.
funny,
They're
you
like
know,
really
the
funny memes. Like,
Yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
I was
yeah.
like, wow,
So
and I'm gonna go right now and go.
go
but yeah,
there.
you should follow her Facebook reels. They make my day. It's like a ritual now that I always have to check them every day because yes, you will make a lot of connections.
It's funny because someone said to me one day, "Oh, you're just so funny. You make up all the," and I'm like, "No, this is really like I'm experiencing this, or a parent that I'm helping is experiencing this, where I walked through this as a parent when I was advocating for my child." So, and I do throw a couple of those on TikTok as well, if you want to follow over there. But my whole goal there is just to bring awareness around why we need to identify, why we need to support, and why we need to actually follow the law when it comes to our kids. So I use humor to do that sometimes, but also I'll pack a little punch with just some quotes. I love to quote smart people like Mallory. I may know more about some of the laws and stuff, but Mallory has got me beat all day when it comes to being a cult. And I think cults are amazing. And I want to loop back around really quick and say, I wish Georgia could take a note from Alabama. We are not there yet, but that's a dream of mine. Maybe Mallory will make that dream come true one day. Maybe she'll be part of that solution. But yeah, follow us. Like she said, Learning Ally. We're doing great things with them. Follow us on our socials. LinkedIn, we're on there as well. You can always reach out. We're always happy. We do, like she said, we're often helping people and no strings attached. It's our way of paying it forward in this space just to support people. At some point, we're somewhere where we needed help and people came along and helped us and we learned and grew. And that's really what we want to do with what we know. So, and then if you pop into social media, there's so many other great people. I could go on forever, but we have so many heroes in that space who were really.
Find your own Mallory and Missy.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I don't think that's possible. I think y'all are fair.
You guys are so kind. We're so glad that we could do this. This was fun.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Melissa, you want to ask your magic question?
Sure. If you had one wish that you could grant for our students, what would it be and why?
If I had one wish for our students, it would be that they would have a teacher every year who understands dyslexia and can fully support them. There's a quote out there. I won't be able to quote it, but it's just the power of a knowledgeable teacher in dyslexia, the impact they have on students. Just truly understand dyslexia and just being able to help that child not make assumptions, but really just give them what they need. That would be my wish, because the teachers that we've run into like that have really been game changers. Miss Backus is our version of that, and she will forever be the person who changed my son's life completely around. So that everyone's like her. They have the training and the heart, and they can support the kids.
So I'll choose something different, but I have to say, I was going to say the same thing. And mine was Miss Warner. So Mrs. Warner, my 5th grade teacher. But the more and more I've grown to be an advocate in my adult life, the more I appreciated my parents. So my wish is that there are supportive parents who don't stop, like how Missy is, but who do the research, but also like accept the label, but also don't make it their entire life. Like there were definitely moments in my life that I did not feel like the dyslexic kid. I had a normal childhood. It wasn't just about me and the sped classroom. Like a lot of people actually didn't know. And so I kind of really appreciated the balance. I don't know how my parents did it, but they just let me be a kid, but also like they prioritized me getting the help that I needed at the same time. I think that's how I slowly grew out of my anxiety. And so I don't know how they did it. My mom and dad are really phenomenal, but however they did it, it worked, because I sometimes see other kids, and like when parents stay in that blame stage or the denial and the stigma, I just am like, man, I'm so happy that I had the parents that I had or still have.
Yeah.
I love that.
Parents are so instrumental in all of this, and you guys have been wonderful to recognize that role that they play and to help them along the way and go the battle with them. It's just amazing what you guys are doing.
Yeah. Well, my goodness, this has been good night, Irene. We've been doing this for a while. Really appreciate you giving up quite a substantial chunk of time on a Sunday to talk with us. And thank you for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. Melissa really appreciates it. Our audience appreciates everything that you do. So we're going to close it out. So this is Amy.
And Melissa.
And we're the
Dyslexia Duo.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
The Dyslexia Duo podcast hosts are Amy Rodenroth.
Melissa Dean.
Our producer is Greg Rodenroth.
You can find us on Facebook at The Dyslexia Duo.
Email us any questions or comments at thedyslexiaduo@gmail.com.
Awareness is so important. Share this podcast with your friends,
family,
and teachers.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye.